Hello friends, we have finally reached Module 8, the last module in Philosophy 5350, Ethics. For this short video, I want to take a look at what are grades? How do they work? What are they good for? So one initial way to think about what grades are is they're a form of agreement. And this agreement is formed in college classrooms through a syllabus. For other courses, they may take the form of unified standards or policies. The idea being that if you do these things, if you turn in these items, if you perform these actions, then in return you get a grade that is commensurate with your work. Now, the most extreme version of this that I've seen is called contract grading. And a friend of mine went to a grad school that used this method. I don't want to name it, but if I did, you would recognize it. It's a relatively large and important school. But the contract grading system they had was that each individual student would go talk to the professor at the beginning of the class and make a contract with them as far as how much work they would do and what quality level it would be, and then what grade they would receive in exchange. So let's say you came to the professor and you said, all right, I think based on the syllabus and the requirements here, I think I can make a B in your class. And so you sign the contract for a B. And now that means that there are only two grades possible for you. There is, if you meet everything that you agreed to for the B, then you make a B in the class. If you go beyond that, if let's say you did all the work at the quality that would be required for an A, you still only get a B because that's what you contracted to do. And then of course if you make less than a B, like you did the work necessary for a B minus or a C or something like that, then unfortunately you just make an F. There are only two grades possible with the contract. There's fulfilling the contract and you get that B, or there's not fulfilling the contract and you get an F. And that's it. I thought this was one of the most tyrannical and horrible methods of grading that I'd ever heard of. The amount of pressure that you have to endure in order to decide this. Like, what if you contract with all your professors to make A's? It's like, all right, I'm going for my 4.0. I want to make an A in everything. There's no room for mistakes. There's no room for error. If there's even one assignment that you don't do well enough on, that course you earn an F. It just sounds horrible. There's just no room for error at all. So anyway, a lot of times though, especially in grad school, the grades just signal preparedness for subsequent work. I had a long conversation with some colleagues of mine about what the grade means. So most grad schools, and HBU is one that's like this, you have to make a 3.0 cumulative GPA in order to graduate. That is, you have to have a B average. And so B is the bottom barrier for being able to graduate. So really, the grades mean something a little bit different. You're not sitting here trying to differentiate, well, this student did better than that one, so they get an A instead of an A minus or something like that. Instead, it's more like A means continue. A minus is continue, but you need to shape up. B plus is I'm not so sure. You need to do a lot better. A B is you're barely passing. B minus might as well be a failing grade. That's like getting a D in undergrad. An undergrad is you'd have to make a C or above in order to have an average that's meets the requirements for graduation. So a B minus in grad school is the same as a D in undergrad. So you don't want to get D's. So a B minus is a big no-no. In fact, even a B or a B plus shows that something is wrong. That your expectation would be in grad school that everybody, if they're doing all the things that they should do and they're progressing correctly, would be making A's and A minuses. But I actually encountered a a student. He was applying for a position, and he was from a very large school, very prestigious. He was working on his PhD, and he was almost finished with it. They sent over the transcripts, and at this very prestigious school, half of the graduate courses had no grade associated with them. And a few of them were marked as professor declined to enter a grade. Professor declined to enter a grade. We all thought this was really strange at first until we started looking at what he was doing and the school that he was at. And so this student was in the process of co-writing several articles with his professors. His dissertation was nearly done. He was getting ready to defend it. And from what I can figure, the reason that there were no grades, that the professors didn't bother to give a grade for any of these classes, was that the grade was, at this point, completely irrelevant. If you're co-writing peer-reviewed articles with your professors, what does the grade even mean anymore? It doesn't signal anything. It doesn't say, oh yes, you're ready for the next thing. You're already a scholar. You're already publishing. What more do you need? If there was a problem, and I guess this is the way that these professors thought of it, if there was a problem, if this person wasn't up to snuff or they didn't want to work with them, well, they would just have them removed from the program. This is an extremely prestigious university. You don't have to work with anybody you don't want to work with. So the grade is saying, oh yeah, they passed my class. It doesn't even mean anything. And all that matters is that they're just about finished with their PhD. They're publishing already. They're a scholar. We simply need to go through the formality of defending their work, and they can go on their way. The grade no longer was a meaningful signal. I thought that was just fascinating. Grades do allow us to measure a student against their peers, so that is something that is valuable. But how valuable is that comparison? And why not just give out an A for everyone? And I know this video is a bunch of stories, but I have one more for you. There was a famous professor, philosophy professor at Texas A&M University, and he was notorious for giving out A's to everyone on the first day of class. So there's an intro philosophy class. This is for people who probably not majors, but one of their requirements was to take a philosophy class. And he told everyone at the beginning of the semester that everyone in the class gets an A, that he's already filled out the paperwork for it, he's already filled out the grade, and as soon as the registrar will allow him, he will turn in a grade of A for everyone. And then he waits for a moment for that to sink in, dramatic pause, and then he says, well, now that that's out of the way, let's see if we can learn something. And he still had the same requirements and expectations. He would still throw people out of class for not studying enough, for being disrespectful or rowdy. He would still require reading. He would still have assignments that were due. And quite a few of the students decided that, well, if they're getting an A, they're going to go earn that A. And then other ones just felt that it was freeing, that they no longer had to worry about, was this good enough? They could actually go and explore the ideas that were in the philosophy class and see where the ideas took them, instead of trying to jump through a bunch of hoops or earn the approval of the professor. Well, that's already done. Now you can just focus on learning. And while this is kind of an extreme example, and I think the only reason he was able to get away with it is, first of all, it was a large research university, and that he himself had tenure and was kind of famous, so he's untouchable. No one could do anything to him for this. But that he was onto this observation that maybe having grades out there, it might be interfering with our ability to learn. That by putting this requirement that you have to do this work in order to get some number or letter grade, there's something coercive about this arrangement that may not really work that well for some disciplines. If we're trying to get across a love of poetry or literature, well, how much does coercing people to read it and then force them to say something about it, how is that helping anything? So I'm not saying I agree with them. I still give out grades, but maybe there's an observation worth thinking about here. Maybe the structure of the class and grading has actually made it harder for students to learn, or interposed this layer in between the student and the teacher. So here's another issue about grading that has always bothered me, and it's this idea of the hidden requirements. So I got into a rather heated discussion with a few of my colleagues about this, because my position is that if a student does everything that's asked of them, then they should receive an A. If there are other things that they should do other than the ones that I asked them to do, and that they have to do those as well in order to make an A, then perhaps I've been dishonest in the way that I've put the class together. Because if there's things that they need to do that they'll be rewarded for doing, or in this case punished for not doing, and I don't tell them what those are, then I might have created a bizarre kind of guessing game where, okay, you do all the things, but there's this other hidden thing. There's these hidden menu options that you still have to do, and maybe I don't even know exactly what they are. I have to cloak them with words like, well, I might say, well, it wasn't done with excellence. It was merely adequate, and then well, why wasn't that spelled out? What counts as adequate and excellent? And if I have everything spelled out for what counts as excellence, and you do all those things, then why shouldn't you get an A? In that case, why shouldn't everyone in the class be at least able to get an A? That if they do all the things that are on the syllabus, and they do them, they legitimately do every single one, then what is there left for me to do other than give them an A? Because it seems to me that the reverse seems unjust. If there is a punishment for not going, quote unquote, above and beyond, then I'm not sure those actions really are above and beyond. They're actually requirements, but those requirements are hidden. So one of the things I've tried to do to help my students trust me and to foster a more collaborative relationship with them is to be extremely clear about what it is that they're going to be asked to do. And that if they do all those things, all of them, then they'll receive an A. And so now the only thing left to do is to go do those things. And I'll help you. We'll do them together. But there isn't anything extra. There isn't any hidden thing that you also have to do that I won't tell you about. You just have to somehow guess or receive the right advice so that you know to do them. That there's not going to be anything like that in the class. There's merely the requirements and then the grade. So grading is useful. There is some real value in differentiating the students. If everyone gets an A, we won't be able to know how they did relative to each other. And so and one way that differentiation is valuable is that it can enforce higher standards. Say that, well, some students will be able to do more or to do better than other students, and that it's not the case that the class was poorly designed or that they weren't given fair warning of what's going to be required, but that some students simply have greater capabilities than others, and the whole class would benefit from that. Additionally, how will you know which students to advance, which students to recommend? For my work as a professor, I often get students ask for a recommendation to go to grad school or for an internship or a job, and being able to look over their work and see A's and B's rather than C's and D's gives me a lot of information at a glance that I might not be able to get without going through and reading everything that they wrote for their classes or examining every test that they did or every lab report that they wrote. So having some method of saying these students are the ones who have excelled and they need to be encouraged to do more work in this area. And when the time comes for someone to ask me how were they as a student, I can say glowing things. Well, it seems like we need some method of differentiation for that, and grading seems to do a good job. And then lastly, you can reward a certain kind of competitive effort with grading that would otherwise be impossible. So knowing that the person next to you has a higher grade than you do, or that you have a higher grade than them, it allows them to push each other to learn more. But on the other hand, that differentiation brings with it some elements that are unfair. The pressure that students feel, I think, is truly extraordinary. I don't think I've seen more stressed out people in my whole life than during finals week. That pressure, I don't know if it's as valuable as we think it is. Similarly, there's quite a few students who feel like if they don't make an A, then they failed. That the two grades that are possible for them, even though there is no contract grading system, that really for them it's A or F. That B's or C's might as well be F's as far as they're concerned. And so we don't do as good a job, I think, rewarding people who pass with a B or pass with a C. And instead we see them as potentially like slackers or not doing really what they should. And so these lesser successes, maybe grading and having these grade scales don't allow us to celebrate those as much as we should. And then lastly, and this is one that I do worry about, that it can invite behavior extinction. So if I'm rewarding this particular activity, as soon as the reward stops, the activity is going to stop too. So if I say, all right, everyone, I'm going to give you, X number of points, and whatever it is, 10 points for going home and reading this book, or reading this set of poems, or doing these extra homework problems, or whatever it is, then I've set a pattern where the only time that those actions will be done is when there's a reward to go along with it. I've basically taken away the ability for you to do those things just because you find them valuable and rewarding. Now they'll only be done when there's a reward to go along with them. And this reward in this case is points or a grade or something that goes into your final semester grade. So this does worry me. I think we might need to be careful about training our students to only do these things that we find valuable when someone else is more or less paying them to do it, in this case paying them with points. Ultimately, though, we want the experience of education to prepare our students for the real world, for them to be able to apply these skills within their own lives. So to what degree have we made grades a good preparation for life? Is it doing the job that we want them to do? Have we perhaps inadvertently created a failure desert? If we look at the way most things are learned, you wind up having to retry them over and over again. You do a poor job of it the first time and have to keep working at it until you learn that the real world is full of failures, full of things that didn't work out, things that you attempted but then they went nowhere, or you didn't have the skill to carry them off, but then you keep trying them. We all use these iterative processes to develop and to learn and to grow. And if our grading system is a high stakes, winner take all, no do-overs, no second chances, one big grade, we're never able to learn from failure, that you can only not fail all the time. And so this incredibly valuable thing, this incredibly valuable experience of failing and trying again, our students perhaps never get that. And so we need to be careful in the process of creating grades not to create a failure desert where students never get a chance to learn from their mistakes. The cost of the mistakes are simply too high. I hope you've enjoyed these stories, and I hope this class has given you a lot of new things to think about. Ethics and philosophy are truly beautiful things, and I hope you were able to experience a taste of that over these 8 weeks.